Hey guys, it's Ethan Cetton from your Math Concepts and Reasonings class, and today for my in-class lesson I will be talking about probability. So the first question that comes up when talking about probability is, what exactly is probability? So for those of you who don't know, I have the definition right here for you, don't you worry. So to sum it up as easy as possible, probability is the chance that something will happen or how likely that an event will occur. So when talking about probability and knowing what its definition is, we have to look deeper inside of that concept and look at the key terms that make up probability and the different types of probability within this. So right here, I have 5 different types of probability terms that you can find when talking about this lesson. So the first one that we can talk about is certain probability. And certain probability is an event that will happen without a doubt. So 100% chance of this happening and a 0% chance that this event will not happen. Our next concept is likely probability, and the probability of one event is higher than the probability of another event is likely probability. Equal probability is the chance of each event happening is the same. And unlikely probability is one event is less likely to happen versus another event. And our final concept that we'll talk about is impossible probability. And this is when there's no chance of an event happening. So we're going to go over each term in depth and give an example to help us further our understanding with each probability term. So the first term that we're going to be looking into is certain probability. So like I mentioned before, certain probability is when there is a 100% chance of an event happening and there is a 0% chance of an event not occurring. So we can look at an example of this as our election that's happening right now. And on November 3rd, there will 100% chance be an election that is held, because there is a 0% chance that something catastrophic will happen and our election will not be held. So with this, knowing the percentages of 100 to 0, we can determine that our election is certain. And so this is an example of certain probability. An example of likely probability we actually could see is in our everyday lives when we wake up in the morning and we look at the weather forecast. And sometimes it says that it is likely to snow or it is likely to rain. And we wake up the next day and there's no snow or rain. And it confuses us, but that's because they determine that it is likely to snow or likely to rain. So there's a 75% chance that it will snow, but that also means that there's a 25% chance that it will not snow. And so when we look at this in depth, it means that it is not a certain chance that it'll snow, but it is more likely, and that it has a very good chance of happening, but it doesn't mean that it's specifically going to happen. Moving on to equal probability, and this is most common example can be found in flipping a coin. And so I have my trusty old penny right here. So when I look at this penny, it has 2 sides, heads and tails. And so that means that there's a 50% chance of when I flip it that it'll land on either side. So when there's equal chance of an event happening for either side, that is determined as equal probability. So unlikely probability, that is similar to likely probability, except it's the opposite, as there is a greater chance of an event not happening rather than an event happening. So we can find this in an example of a house fire. So most of you in our class have probably not had our houses catch on fire in their lifetime. And we don't know many people that have had their houses or any other buildings catch on fire, because the event of a fire on a building is very statistically low. But that doesn't mean that there is not fires within our houses and communities. But because that there is a greater chance of the fire not happening compared to the fire happening, that makes that this event unlikely probability. And moving on to our final term, we're going to look at impossible probability. And so this is opposite of certain probability. That means there is a 0% chance of this event occurring, and there is a 100% chance of this not occurring. So one example that we can look at, stick to the election, is myself being elected as president. Although I would make a fine president, there is still no chance, because I am only 18 years old and I'm not on the ballot. But like we can see here, I think I look perfectly fine and capable of being president as an 18-year-old standing next to Lil Wayne. So just keep that in mind for when I'm 40. And so now that we have our terms cleared up, we can look at the mathematical side of probability. And so we looked at our previous definition of probability, and that was the likely chance of an event happening. But the mathematical definition could be described as the ratio of events occurring over the possibility of the outcomes of these events. So like I put forward here in my PowerPoint, I have the probability equation for us, and that is the number of desired outcomes over the possible outcomes in a division equation, so a ratio fraction type deal. And to further our in-depth analysis of this, we can look at an example that I can provide for you. Although I do not have a die on me right now, I can tell you all about it. And so when I roll a die, we all know that it has 6 sides on it. And if I'm trying to roll the number 2 side of this die, I have a 1 in 6 chance of making it onto this side. So that would mean that I would put the 1, so I'm looking to get the number 2 side, so that's one side I want to get it, so we'll put that on the top. But there are 6 possible sides that I could get on, so we'll put that on the bottom. So that means that there is a 1 in 6 probability of me rolling onto the number 2 side of that die. All right, guys, so I managed to find a dice. Thank you to the second floor Shenmen. Gotta love it. So we see that this dice has 6 sides, like I explained, and I am looking to land on the 2. And so we can determine that I have a 1 in 6 chance of landing on the 2 if I rolled it once right now. And so let me go ahead and roll it right there. And I landed on the 3. So when I landed on a 3, I also had a 1 in 6 chance of landing on this as well, since each side has a 1 in 6 chance of landing on its individual side. So I could roll this as many times as I want, and I just landed on the 5. So each time I'll have the same chance of landing on that number 2, which is a 1 in 6 chance, as I land on any other number. So for 4, same chance. And we can find this, like I mentioned, in our equation. And so we put that 1 chance at the top, which is our number 2 we're trying to land on, our individual outcome, and then the 6 on the bottom, which is our amount of outcomes in possibility. And to summarize our quick lesson on probability, we can look back at the definition I gave you to start it all out, and know that probability is the chance that something will happen, or how likely it is that an event will occur. We talked about the different terms that are inside of probability, the 5 different terms, and their definitions, and we gave examples for that we can learn from. And to wrap it up in the last slide, we gave a quick little dabble into the mathematical side of probability in the equation. So we found the dice example to be helpful within this. And that is the end of my lesson. Hopefully you are now an expert at probability. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Professor Coates will allow you to respond to this lesson, and you can always ask me about probability. Thank you for the time to watch it.